Y'all, I was up for about 2.5 hours yesterday recording. Well, not recording because we're recording now, but deck constructing for the Galactus First Step season. There are so many new cards and they're all very, very, very different. The way you want to build decks with each of these cards is completely different archetypes and styles. So it's not just one deck that's going to become meta because of the releases today. It's probably going to be an entire group of cards are going to get better, especially because the season pass is a giant 6-drop, and 6-drops historically have been pretty good that come out recently. You look at Gore, you look at Red Hulk, you look at, Scar is technically a 7, but you get the idea. Like, well, now it's a 7. Normally big card does good thing. That's essentially what happens with the season pass, but all of the other stuff I don't think should be slept on. So I made 18 different decks. I've already posted them as a giant list on X and Blue Sky and all of those socials, but I wanted to put something here on YouTube as well. So let's just take a quick look at all the day one decks for the Heralds of Galactus season, and I want to talk through my strategies on them and why I built certain decks the way that I did, because there isn't just one way to play every brand new card. So first up, we're going to take a look at Galactus Fantastic Four First Steps. My Herald is the next card I see you play. End of turn, +2 power if you're winning my Herald's location. Now, the thing with this that I screwed up in the last season preview video is I thought it was referring to your opponent's card. For some reason. Yes, that is the thing. I really thought it was the opponent's card. I don't know why, but I did. And now with that knowledge, I did completely different deck construction because of it. So what I ended up deciding with is, first off, the best synergy in the game right now is hands down Cannonball Mercury. So I have 6 decks for Galactus First Steps. Half of them have Cannonball Mercury. I'll tell you that in advance. Don't worry, if you don't have Cannonball Mercury, the other 3 don't have them. But it's just an incredibly strong thing to do right now, because on the same token, you can either destroy a card and bring it back with Cannonball, Fenris Wolf, Mercury, or if you don't go down that path, you still have other ways to destroy cards like Gladiator and Negasonic Teenage Warhead and Shang-Chi, and then big card go boom on the final turn. Then you also have a Wiccan line because it's consistent, because you have 4 2-drops and Quicksilver and 3 3-drops. Like, I think Wiccan's going to be regularly going to be dropping in this type of deck. And I was looking at every possible turn 6 combination that I could see here, whether it's if you hit Wiccan, a 5 and a 3, so Cannonball and any of those 3s, or a 6 and a 2, which could be just straight up Galactus. And you know what? I'm just going to play a 2-3. Okay, fine by me. Or you put Merlin down earlier, get +2 energy for tossing out that Quicksilver again, and then you just have a ridiculous amount of energy to make up for the Wiccan shortcomings if you didn't get it. Like, I think that the combination of control, destroy, energy cheat, movement, board manipulation, location change, it's just a really well-rounded deck. I expect something like this to become meta in some capacity, way, shape, or form. Even if it's not this exact 12 cards, I expect something like this to become a deck that gets a bunch of people to infinite day 1. Then I started getting freaky because I was like, I got to put 2 Galacti, right? That's what we're going to call it. 2 Galacti in the same deck, because whether you have this one in your hand to start getting the +2s already, or you have this one in your hand because you're trying to set up that whole line, I thought of a deck that was like, you know what, let me just throw a bunch of goblins over, let me lane control a whole bunch, and then also use Hellion, who I think is still a very under-respected card in Marvel Snap, for the same reasons that people played Vision, which is the unknown on turn 6, what's going to happen. You can just as much do that with Hellion, because now it's a full 50-50 of where are you going to clear out to possibly play your Galactus? Is it going to be in the Goblins lane or not? Or are you going a whole other direction, not moving anything, and just drop down the giant Galactus first steps on the final turn also? So you've got a little bit of lane control, a little bit of energy cheat, because you've got Ravona, Hope Summers to give you extra energy, and Luna Snow to get you extra energy. Then you've got the Clog element with the Goblins. Selene actually has a small play here, because look at it, you got 2 Goblins, and worst case scenario, okay, it hits your Adam Warlock, which you don't end up playing. It doesn't hurt the rest of the deck. So I think there's something here to this style of Galactus double Galacti build right now. And I just thought it was fun because we haven't had a true Galactus deck actually be meta relevant, and that Indecision might be able to do that for us. $80 for a bucket. If you know, you know. This is another one of the Cannonball Mercury decks, but this one takes a different spin. This one's the Black Knight variation. So Black Knight decks don't typically need to run the Mercury, Fenris, Wolf, Cannonball combo. However, when you do implement it with Gambit and Moon Knight, now you've got a couple of different things that you can do here with this deck. You've got a little bit of control via the destroy element or move element of Cannonball. You're interfering with Moon Knight because a lot of people are going to be playing Galactus first steps, but you have alternative play lines because of that. So that's why the only 4-drop in here is Ghost Rider, so you can bring back one of those big cards, or even if you discard the Fenris Wolf, that's totally fine because you can bring back the Fenris Wolf on turn 4 and still be able to revive another card afterwards and activate it. So I wanted to build a Black Knight deck that has a little bit of flexibility in there, and right now it's just because of Fenris Wolf, it organically fits into that package of what Black Knight decks typically want to do already. I think the flex card in here is Serra, but I really also did like the idea of playing Mercury plus Cannonball as a turn 6 play, if absolutely need may be. Plus, you can even take it a step further and play 2 cards like Moon Knight plus Ghost Rider on turn 6 instead of just playing Galactus First Steps or just skipping and playing Infinite. So it's just other ways to get the cards down and trying to manipulate the energy with Serra, but more importantly, interfering with your opponent's hand, because a lot of people are going to be playing this card. So having the ability to destroy your opponent's Herald or discard your opponent's Galactus First Steps, I think is going to be very strong in at least the first week of the season, when lots of people are experimenting like we are for this. This is the 3rd instance of the Mercury Cannonball. This is the last one of it. The other 2 after this don't have it. Okay, I promise you, don't worry. With that said, what is this deck trying to do outside of Merc Ball? It's a lockdown control deck, but it's not your typical lockdown control deck because I couldn't play Dr. Doom. That's because of Stardust, who we'll talk about in a little bit, also coming out, and Stardust is going to be played in a lot of decks because it's the first week of the season. So it had to be a different instance of a lockdown deck that just says, I have a bigger card than you, and I'm going to be able to move my power around better than you, which is why Merc Ball ended up in here, because then you've got the flexibility of both Jeff and Mercury being able to move around the board. Plus Jeff, obviously you could play into something like a Prof X lane. So it's very heavy on big cards. It's all about either getting the Prof X or the Legion down. That's what this whole deck is really honestly about. It's getting that combination, the Storm, War Machine, Legion type combo down, or get a Prof X down and then saying, I have a bigger card than you do. Drop. That's what's good. That's the whole name of the game, because it's not about reaching into the location later. This isn't about knocking your opponent's card into that lane via a Juggernaut. It's about destroying them in the lane that you won because of the turn 5 move. If you get your turn 5 move to happen effectively, or your Storm lane super early guaranteed to be secured because you know your opponent's deck doesn't support the idea of reaching into a closed lane, then yes, you're going to do very well with this deck. But be careful with it, because it also could be setting up a lot of traps for yourself, because you think you have the out, but you lost track of how many turns you saw that Red Hulk appear from your opponent's hand. Or it's a deck that typically would play something like Doom 2099 or Dr. Doom or any other reach-in card like that. I think Jeff makes a comeback this week. I think he still needs a little bit of love, but I think overall, because of what Galactus First Steps invites in different archetypes, I expect to see a lot more Jeff the Baby Landshark play in general this week, and I think most people are going to be pretty happy about that. Then there's Cosmic Nightmare. It's a straight up Sauron deck. It's a big card Sauron deck. I have bigger cards than you. Vomit. That's all it is. It's let me take the Infinite, switch it. Let me take the Red Skull, switch it. Starbrand, switch it. Now, we've seen the evolution of Sauron decks where a lot of them don't play the 6-drops. A lot of 6-drops are being cut from these decks because they want to have 2 cards to play on the final turn. Sometimes it's the Scar synergy. Sometimes it's only focused on Starbrand, Typhoid Mary, Red Skull. So the alternate in this is playing this into a Dracula line, and I really thought that that would be a lot of fun because there's also the potential that your Infinite could be nightmared into a Galactus First Steps or into other big cards that are going to scale over. So as Galactus is sitting in your hand and gaining all of this extra power, if it's there on your opening turn, by the time you play Nightmare, it's already a 6/16, and at least it has another option if you don't get it to happen also. Lockjaw is in here for the same reason that we would see Blink traditionally. It's about flipping cards out if you absolutely need to. So Lockjaw goes down. Let's say you're having a little bit of a slow roll. It's turn 4 and you don't have your Infinite in hand, but you do have your War Machine. It might not be a bad idea to Lockjaw the War Machine because the percentages say it's better to pull from the deck something random than hope on a draw exclusively on the next turn. Lizard's in here for the same reason, and Dracula because we just play big cards in hand and then absorb all their power afterwards. I think that Sauron for Galactus First Steps is going to be, it should be explored a little bit because the big end of the War Machine style Nightmare decks could be a very good home for Galactus First Steps. A little bit more flexibility on this one because it's very linear, but Nightmare can also be your best friend or your worst enemy. I mean, that's kind of the point of him, right? Lastly, for Galactus First Steps, it's the end of the world, which I spelled wrong as I look at it now in the text there. You know, it happens. This is what happens when you're on like hour 16 of your day. So end of the world is end of turn deck. It's just, look, Sunspot, Hydra Bob, Adam Warlock, Bruce Banner, Mr. Fantastic First Steps, Makari, most of the time Prodigy, Invisible Woman, and Red Hulk. They're all end of turn cards. So Invisible Woman Prodigy, we already know is incredibly strong synergy, but a lot of people are also playing Killmonger because of the Marvel Boy variations that are existing right now. So I threw the Kyera in here just to help protect Sunspot and Hydra Bob. I don't think we need anything else other than that. And we get a little bit of float because a lot of the deck is very low for the first 3 turns. So Bruce Banner has opportunities to get dropped down on turn 2 and still be able to ramp up, especially on turn 5. You could do absolutely nothing and still make something happen. And it's not restricted. It's not a Sunspot Infinite deck. It's still Red Hulk as a potential option. It could get reduced down by Mr. Fantastic First Steps for all we know. Get a double proc at the very end with Invisible Woman Prodigy. But it's not the whole Havoc Thena energy cut package. It's just everything else, really. Is Galactus First Steps a true end of turn card that makes something like Fantastic Card need to be with it or need to have Invisible Woman First Steps in it? In my opinion, no. But it's always good to get +4 on an extra turn instead of +2, or to get an extra 2 power on it and just have it be a even larger body because you already won a lane that's been locked down by your opponent by accident in some way, or you're just so clearly outscaling that lane already early on that they're just going to forfeit it. So keep an eye on this style of build for Galactus. I think people are going to experiment with it, but a lot of the things prior I think are going to be stronger than it. All right, we're moving on to Silver Surfer First Steps. I think the card's getting a little bit of a bad rap because some people are saying that it's a worse version of Absorbing Man. Some people are saying that it's a worse version of Prodigy. If you don't know, it's a 3/4, which with an end of turn ability. If you're winning this location with an on reveal card, copy its text. What I don't see a lot of people talking about with this card is the notion that if you have it and you have nothing else in the lane, you can still play it. And then later on, play an on reveal in there and get 2 on reveals to happen because it's end of turn. So you're setting yourself up. This isn't about have the on reveal there already and then play this there. This is about let it happen the other way around. I think when you change your mindset of how you want to play the card and you want to play this down on turn 3 and then later play an on reveal that you want to have happen twice in the lane, your brain completely changes on the card and it's so much stronger than you give it credit for. Is it going to be a fantastic car level card? No, I do not think so in any way, shape, or form. But it's a lot cheekier than what people give it credit for. So let's talk something like Ronin. That's where I have this, where it's just simply, you know what? That's literally the name of the deck. Just, you know what? It is what it is. This is a Misery. You see Hood, you see Fenris Wolf, you see Killmonger. You understand a lot of what this deck is doing. It's basically a mill package built in with a Ronin package. It doesn't need to have Master Mold in it. It has a couple of different options because the Supergiant and the Silver Surfer are deciding how are you choosing to mill. Are you choosing to mill the deck to put it in their hand, or are you choosing to mill at the very end for the Ronin? Are you choosing it to get it to your side of the board and destroy it? The Ronin in the opening hand or not is what decides which line you're going to play with the deck. It has a ton of power built in it between the Demons and the Maximuses that you can drop on in there, stealing your opponent's cards with Baron Zemo and Gladiator, but Supergiant is the big counter right now to Invisible Woman First Steps, and I think Supergiant decks need to be explored because of it. Maximus is in here in replacement for Ronin, in replacement for Master Mold, and then it's a bunch of control. So you're choosing how you want your Silver Surfer First Steps to work. Are you looking for this to be something that you get a double Maximus play, so you can get 3 cards on a typical game of 6 turns, normal draws, you can get 3 cards into your opponent's hand because you played the Maximus in that lane? Or are you doing this differently because you're doing a bunch of destroy elements and you get the Hood to happen, then it gives you a Demon, then you get the Silver Surfer First Steps, then you get the Hood again, another Hood, and then you can Misery both of them because now it's taken on that text from the Hood and you get even more Demons. Like, there's a lot of cycles in here. There's a lot of cycles in here. And I think that this style of deck is going to be a good home for Silver Surfer First Steps because people are not talking about this card correctly. This is a turn 3 card with a turn 6 option, not just a turn 6 card behind a pre-played on reveal. Change your mind about this card and you will break it. I'm telling you. Take a look at something like this. This is more so what people are thinking about. They want to do Silver Surfer. They want to say, I'm going to play an on reveal, and then behind it, I'm going to play the Silver Surfer First Steps. That's what this deck invites. It invites either Sage, Silver Surfer, or Hitmonkey, all to be played twice because of Silver Surfer First Steps. If you've seen this deck before, I know it from TLSG. Some people know it from Splat. Some people know it from a couple of different variations and iterations. I think it's one of the more fun versions of Silver Surfer, and it's straightforward. The whole goal of the deck is get Sarah Onslaught both down by turn 5, because you have them in the same lane, and then you can drop everything. Drop your entire hand of 3 drops on the final turn. So one lane you play the Hitmonkey, another lane you play Sage and Silver Surfer First Steps, and then afterwards you play Silver Surfer. Or you spread the power out wider because you play a Silver Surfer in that lane with the strong guy and the Gladiator, for example, and you look to get a second hit that way. There are different ways to build which on reveal you want Silver Surfer First Steps to have. Do you want it to be a super tall stack because you're copying another Sage or another Hitmonkey? Or do you want it to hit differently because you just want it to get double Silver Surfer to help spread a little more power wider rather than power vertically? This is a deck that Silver Surfer First Steps will thrive in the Silver Surfer archetype. Because Silver Surfer wants to be played on turn 6, this makes it more flexible to be able to do that. So I like that for this type of deck. I don't actually like it as much in a traditional Surfer deck. Now spin even further and look at something like traditional discard. I looked at the top 8 versions of discard, found the combinations of which cards are most commonly being used, which ones are most successful with their win rate, with their cube rate, with the amount of games played, etc. And this was the list I ended up settling in. It's not the Arnim Zola variations, it's not the Prodigy variations, it's not the Frigga variations, it's not the Grandmaster variations. I took all of those cards out, and the best performing decks are the card that I typically don't like playing at all, which is Gambit, because Gambit's randomness typically hurts. But you have to lean into that to make it work for this type of deck. Silver Surfer First Steps allows you to do that. You can play that down on turn 3, draw Gambit later, and then get 2 discards back to back because Gambit is in the same lane as Silver Surfer First Steps. That's how you play a card like this. This isn't play MODOK and then final turn hope that you top deck Silver Surfer First Steps to make all the bananas happen. Sure, you could, but that's not the goal of the deck. This is, I'm setting up my backup mechanics the same way that you would set up a Grandmaster to make an effect happen again, a Frigga to get a second version of a copy, the Prodigy to make another version of a card. You see what I'm saying here? This is a card that allows that to happen because it makes up for lost time. Blade is a good way to do that, right? You hit 2 cards on the right-hand side because you didn't want to hit it earlier on because you liked the card that was in the right-hand lane. Instead, you play the Silver Surfer First Steps. Then a couple of draws later, you get 2 back-to-back that you like. Perfect. Discard, discard, because you went Blade into the Silver Surfer First Steps lane. I'm telling you, rethink how you look at this card, and you'll see much more synergy playing it on turn 3 than you will by playing it later in the game. It's going to be a good card, probably a B tier card, but it's going to take people time to change their preconceptions about how to use it. Now there's Redshift. So we're going to start, obviously. This one I actually sat on for a while. I sat on, how do I make 3 decks with Redshift? Because the only thing screaming at me was Agatha. Is literally the only thing screaming at me. It's Black Knight, Agatha, and that's it. That's all you want this deck to really do. You want to get Black Knight down on 1. Redshift gets played automatically by Agatha on 2. Agatha's always the leftmost card in your hand because you draw her first. And then you end up with a 4/14 Ebony Blade in your hand. Then you're playing Control Discard with Moon Knight to get rid of your opponent's Galactus First Steps that they're probably playing in their hand as well, or Stardust that's still waiting in their hand, waiting to get played. You've got a couple of ways that you can rock this deck out. You've got Black Bolt Stature, which I still think deserves to go back up to 5/8. I'm going to keep arguing that 1 second dinner as long as possible. And then some strong cards, you know, strong 5-drop in Iron Man, strong 5-drop in Claw, strong 5-drop in Black Bolt. So that way, if chaos needs to happen on the final turn, you've got it. But Redshift is the same reason, more or less. It, for the most part, is the same reason that you would see previously Spider-Ham in a lot of these decks. Because you're hoping, keyword, hoping that it's going to interfere with your opponent's deck enough between Moon Knight, Black Bolt, and Spider-Ham that you don't have to worry about what happened on turn 2. Because it played itself on turn 1 with Spider-Ham and then activated it on turn 2. Redshift is mitigating the Agatha, which is giving you the similar benefit of what that turn is supposed to be doing. That's why I cut that card and went with Redshift. So Agatha, who's going to be discarded immediately because of Redshift discarding the leftmost card in your hand and replacing it with something random. It doesn't matter what it replaces it with in this deck, because the whole goal is just get rid of Agatha and then look to bring back a 4/14 afterwards with Ghost Rider, or get the 4/14 in your hand because of the Ebony Blade. That's the whole goal. That's just the whole goal. But outside of that, what else can you do? Now, I cooked for this one. I'm not gonna lie. I was proud of this one because I cooked for this one. Okay, hear me out. Quicksilver. I know it sounds weird and it doesn't sound powerful, but in a Victoria hand deck, which is an incredibly strong archetype right now, replacing a 1-drop for a 1-drop that gets buffed by Victoria hand is strong. I want you to think about that. It's a 2/3 that gives you the option of just discarding Quicksilver. It's not about playing, this is not about playing Quicksilver on 1. This is not a Wiccan deck. This is discard the Quicksilver on 2 to get a guaranteed 1-drop that's going to get buffed by Victoria hand. And then it's a straight up Victoria hand deck outside of that. You've got Iron Patriot, you've got Mirage, you've got Speed, you've got Frigga, you've got Misery. You see the rest of the deck is pretty straightforward and staple for what a Victoria hand deck wants to do. But one of the things that I did like about Redshift, once I started thinking about that with Quicksilver, is it also gives you the option to discard cards that no longer serve you benefit because you're not choosing to use those play lines. What I mean by that is something like Frigga. There are some games that you just choose not to play Frigga at all, and it just sits in your hand. But what if you could change it into something else of more value? That's what I'm looking at here. Frigga is a card that happens very often with. A later draw for Iron Patriot, like a turn 4 draw for Iron Patriot. If you've got all your 1s still in your hand and you're just dropping a bunch of stuff to then later target it with the Redshift, now you've got something to work with. Like, it's a replacement card. This is the, I don't need to play this line of my deck card, and I like it a lot better because of that. I think Redshift allows the option for flipping strategies because of play lines you choose not to play in a multi-play line deck like this one. Are you going with the Iron Patriot Juggernaut build? Okay, so chances are you don't need your Frigga on turn 5. Go ahead and let Redshift get rid of Frigga to maybe be something more beneficial for you. It's an option card. That's why I like it with the Quicksilver in this deck, to get buffs for Victoria hand. That was the goal of this style of deck. It's something a little bit different. Then there's Super Hela. Super Hela, the Danish version of Super Hela. Danish mainly because of the Odin variation in here, but I also like Supergiant in this deck. I took out Legion from what would be the normal build, and I put Supergiant in here, and sometimes the deck runs 5 6-drops. I thought that was a little bit excessive, considering that Redshift can also transform a 6-drop into Hela. There is that chance, granted it's like a 4% chance, but it's a chance nevertheless that it can do that for you. I went with the Black Cat variation in here as well, because it's just something you don't have to think about. It's not in your hand, and then it allows you exclusively via the Blade, the Redshift, and the Corvus Glaive to discard cards. So similar to how you would see the first Ghost Rider, similar to how you would see even Colleen Wing was making these decks. Now Redshift is saying, look, it's a targeted discard. In the way that Lady Sif wants to be played in these decks, but always ends up having a chance of hitting the 6-drop that you don't want it to hit, Redshift now straight up tells you, I'm hitting this card. Same thing as Blade, right? I'm going to hit this card right here, leave it there. Okay, now it's discarded. Oh, and I'll give you another one for kicks also. The targeting is incredibly important and should not be slept on in this archetype. With Supergiant in the deck, it allows you the play line of having that extra energy going Corvus Glaive into Supergiant, where then you can hide your Hela behind it and then make other mechanics happen on the final turn. Like you can blink the Supergiant on turn 6, get one of the other 6-drops down, then Hela will bring back a 6-drop that you discarded previously. So that's how you've got to look at this type of Hela deck. Is Redshift and Blade are taking the same exact idea of, these are the cards here on these ends, cool, I can hit one of these, Blade will hit this one, and then Redshift will hit this one. And that feels so weird to do backwards because the camera's backwards, so, but I got it right on the screen, so I made it happen. That's Redshift. I've really had to stretch to figure out 3 decks for Redshift, but I do think for discard, he will be a very valuable card. Now Stardust as we hydrate. Stardust, 4/7, ongoing, cards can't be added to locations except by playing or moving them. I think we're going to love this card for a week. I do. I think we're going to love this card for a week because we're tired of certain decks, right? We're tired of Brood Mr. Sinister shenanigans. We're tired of Doom 2099 and Doom. This card will restrict those extra cards that have tokens that get dropped regularly most of the time. Remember that Hela deck I just played, I just wrote about a second ago? If you're up against a Stardust, the entire deck is dead because Hela can't bring anything back because you have to either play the card down or move a card that's already on the board. That's the only way you can move cards around with Stardust on the board. So this week will be a good week for Stardust. And then after this, you might hear a lot of people wanting to have some changes made because it's so annoying. It's just so annoying. So I built a couple of decks with that in mind, right? You've got Kitty Pryde, which can bounce because it can add or remove itself while the Stardust effect is in play. It's going to go bounce up and forth, back and down, etc., etc. And then a bunch of reduction on top of that. Zabu, Mr. Fantastic First Steps, and Surge are all in here. Load a bunch of cards down on the board. The Hawkeye Kate Bishop is the optional card, but it's there mostly for half of the triggers because if you play the Hawkeye Kate Bishop, chances are you're going to need to play both arrows the following turn. If you play both arrows the following turn, followed by Stardust, you'll be fine. But if you try to take an acid arrow and move it to the other side of the board, you should not be able to based on this because you cannot add to your opponent's side. So the acid arrow won't move, just like how the grapple arrow won't pull because you can't, grapple arrow will pull, but the amount of cards that are on the board are going to restrict you from that more often than not, because that's what happens very often in an Elsa Bloodstone deck. So you need to be very careful with how you use the grapple arrow. It's a risk card in this build. But otherwise, it's just a straight up, hey, I wanted to build Sarah Tech, but instead I have 3 other cost reduction options. I don't need Sarah. Here's Elsa Bloodstone, Hope Summers, Angela, stack everything all onto this, and I don't need to have a move card out there type thing. Does switching sides count as adding to locations? Yes. So it's the same thing as Professor X, where, well, I should said that wrong. Professor X is the perfect example of what can and cannot happen when it comes to adding cards to the board. You have to be careful with there. You have to be careful with that. There's a giant list of what cards Stardust does and does not stop and start when it comes to adding versus replacing versus transforming versus merging versus da-da-da-da-da. I'll try and pull up that list so I can showcase it for you here in a little bit. Not your mama's Mark Ball. Yeah, it's Merc Ball, but it's not so clog, because it's taking the Sentry, Hood, Annihilus, Merlin transformation package with the Werewolf by Night bouncing everywhere package and saying Stardust is just going to do things better because I'm going to have more points in control than you are. Stardust is in this deck as a control card for your opponent to stop extra things from happening that should not happen. For example, brooding in the lane that you were going to fire over the void. That is getting restricted by that. Stardust is exclusively going to be, look, I'm controlling my board. If I'm doing the Annihilus thing, I don't want the Stardust thing to interfere with it, so I can pick my battle, right? Which line do I want to run with the deck? And it's another control element for that. I think that this is a great archetype right now and will be a very strong archetype probably for the very foreseeable future until they finally recognize how strong Merc Cannonball is, and then they finally nerf it into the ground somehow. I don't know how, but I mean, I've already showcased, I think, 4, 5, 6 decks that have it in there out of 18. It's just that good. So throw it into this, have the werewolf bounce everywhere for indecisive power, because Stardust allows the werewolf to move. Yeah, I think you got something there. Lastly, for Stardust is Hydra Stomper, because you can move and you can move your opponent's cards, and Stardust is just a good solid 4/7 body. So very often in a lot of those decks, like for example this one, you often see something like an anti-venom for the same reasons. This is in here as a tech control for the same reason of, if you don't have move things, you need to catch up and wait for those small draws to come in on turn 4 and turn 5 so you can do a big move on turn 6. Controlling your opponent's side of the board, whether it be via a Stegron, a Cannonball, however you choose to play the top end of it, Stardust just allows you the execution of being able to do that with less chance of random extra cards interfering with the movements that you're trying to execute elsewise. It gives you more control of saying, my game plan is I'm going to move my cards, but I don't want you screwing with how I'm also going to move your cards simultaneously, whether it be via a Spider-Man or via a Cannonball. Kitty Pryde is in here for Silk to get the extra Hydra Stomper movements going back and forth. Obviously, Miles Morales is in here because it's going to be a 1/6, and Shang-Chi is your other destroy option, but it could be something. Look, Shang-Chi is better than Stegron, so I threw it in here. You could throw Stegron in this deck as well, too. Keep an eye on that. Then there's Terrax the Tamer, the last card all coming out on season release. Terrax the Tamer is a 3/3 on reveal. For each location, shuffle a rock into the losing player's deck. That means the board state at the moment that Terrax is played will decide for each of the locations. Think of it as its own little end of game. Right there, what's the board state in that moment? So location left, location mid, location right. If I'm winning all 3 locations on the moment that Terrax flips, my opponent, who's losing all 3 locations, is going to get 3 rocks added to their deck. However, if I'm losing 1 and they're winning 2, you know what I meant. I'm losing 1 and they're losing 2. Shh, quiet. If I'm losing 1, I get 1 rock. If they're losing 2, they're getting 2 rocks. Basically, it's a better version of Rock Slide. I think Rock Slide is officially dead at this point. I've been wanting a change to Rock Slide for a while now, and now we have Terrax, which is saying for the cost of you putting a rock in your own deck, potentially, you don't have to worry about it. I'll just put extra rocks in your opponent's deck for you. Fine by me, and it's cheaper. Sold. So everybody, yeah, exactly. Salute to Rock Slide. Goodbye. He's gone for good. So I had to build essentially 3 different styles of Darkhawk deck. Darkhawk deck number 1, this is Stats Hawk. It's playing the slowly growing in popularity Darkhawk Black Bolt stature combination and running with it. Moon Knight is in here again for the same exact reasons of interfering with your opponent's Galactus first steps. Proxima Midnight's going to get automatically discarded typically because of that. You've got the Misery Hood package also in here. You can also Misery the Terrax and saying here are even more rocks for you, while I then do Black Bolt into Darkhawk stature. And then I can also reduce those rocks too, so they'd be -1 rocks via Cassandra Nova if she's a later play, which is always a very strong feeling thing to do too. Shadow King, just because of all of the Invisible Woman shenanigans that are existing right now. I think this is a good balance of tech and shenanigans that allows you some flexibility. So if you want to play a Darkhawk deck, out of the 3, this might be my favorite that I probably would start with. Because then we start getting cheeky. Then we get into Ronin, where Ronin, again, I think is going to start making a comeback. There's a lot of cards being added to hand, added to deck, reasons to keep cards in the hand longer. How many times have you seen me talk about Misery and Hoods and Demons and stuff like that? This is just playing into that and then leaning further for your benefit. This is saying Gorgon, Master Mold, let me clog your hand, and then I can either ruin it via bouncing it and then doing it again with Beast, or after I've clogged your hand and there's nothing else you can do here, now let me throw a ridiculous amount of rocks in there too by playing Terrax, then bounce it, and then play Terrax again, and then Darkhawk, and just... This is an annoying deck. That's the best way to word this one. This is an annoying deck to go up against, because almost every turn you're doing something to screw with the opponent's either hand or deck, whether it's activating a Widow's Kiss or you're sending a couple Sentinels to their hand. This is a very annoying deck. Big hands equals big decks. Pause. Lastly, we made it through it. Darkhawk Bounce. This is a variation on the old Iron Monkey style decks from way back. It's saying, I'm going to take Agent Venom and Bast, and I'm just going to say, worst case scenario, I take a rock. That's okay. I'll transform it into a 1/3. Having an ability to manipulate the rocks that you get versus, come here, Taxi, versus the other rocks that your opponents get also is a very strong play. Isn't that right? Thank you. So I'm taking the Hitmonkey build that allows you to play Darkhawk on turn 5 and then vomit cards down on the final turn for the Hitmonkey combinations, ramping up the Bishop, or you go Mystique after the Darkhawk as well. The Hood, there's only one way to get rid of the Hood in this deck, and that's bouncing it with Beast, and that's fine. But I do think that a style of some combination of this is probably going to be long-term the best way to play Terrax. Getting him to proc on turns 3 and potentially 6, that's how you probably want to play him more often. Like the nut draw on this is Terrax on 3, Beast, that and the Hood back to your hand on 4, Darkhawk on 5, and then let Chaos reign on turn 6. Whether it's all of the other mechanics or just simply going Mystique Terrax on turn 6. Very, very strong. So try something of this nature. I do think long term this is going to be the style of build that's most successful, but I know I personally am going to be starting with the Black Bolt stature package in some way, shape, or form first. 18 different decks, and most of them very different, because all 5 of the cards that drop at season reset are very different wants and needs. Sure, and I made a very specific choice to not use overlaps in any way. I didn't want to have a Redshift plus Galactus First Steps deck. I didn't want to do anything like that. I want you to be able to have the option as a player to say, I can always add, but I can't take away when it comes to the decks. So if you have one of these cards, cool. Can I build that build? Or do I have to worry about getting 2 of the new cards on day 1? I didn't want that. This is one of those new cards per build. Have fun with it. Flex it around. Switch it around. If something works, woohoo. If something doesn't work, oh well. Let me know what you think down in the comments. I'm trying something new here by over-explaining the decks. And if you like this, I really, really, really want to know down in the description below, what'd you think of this type of breakdown for the new cards every season? Do you want to see this for the foreseeable future, because typically I'll post it on my socials. I'll make a list, post 8 decks, and I'll post it on the socials. But if you want this to become a video series, please let me know down below for the new cards every season or every week. So thank you. Thank you all so much. You know what to do. Like, subscribe, all the fun stuff. See you next time.